Right. So we are living through very interesting times. There is a confluence of crises and disruptions across the global skies. US is headed for a recession. Europe is gripping with an energy crisis. The war in Ukraine continues. Uh, the price of life's essentials have gone up, high in many countries. In some countries, I was reading an article, they have shot up by 5 to 8 times. And then you have the technological disruptions and demographic changes across regions, which have been reshaping the business environment. Uh, Interestingly, Collins Dictionary last year coined up a word called perma crisis. So, and it was the word of the year for Collins, and it translates into an extended period of instability and insecurity. How does one craft resilient technology in these uncertain times? Sigal, let's start with you. You have been, trying to transform the healthcare sector through creating a unified platform for uh, uh, giving accessible and affordable healthcare to all. How are you trying to look at crafting new technologies for delivering patient outcomes, better patient outcomes?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm very proud to be here today. And a lot of people during this fantastic summit have been speaking about the fact that there was and there is a crisis, that the pandemic has halted the world and has stopped opportunities. In the healthcare space and in a lot of other industries, the pandemic was an opportunity, although, and a great opportunity for growth, for rethinking your technology and investing in technology. It was a downtime. It was a downtime for businesses to meet face to face. We could not travel. The world was down and grappling with a terrible human toll. What we did at Medix, and Medix is a global healthcare management company that manages over 9 million customers spread in over 90 different countries, with offices in 12 different countries, with a very strong footprint in India and across Asia. And when the pandemic actually hit, we realized that this is the time to take the time to reinvent ourselves. And we believe that no company can survive if it does not reinvent itself every few years. You cannot reinvent yourself by creating new offices or nicer spaces. You can only reinvent yourself and shape the future. And for us, specifically the future of healthcare, by reshaping, reinventing, developing and reintroducing new technologies. And that is exactly what we have done.
Absolutely, well put, Sigal. So yes, reinventing, reimagining, and that's, I guess, that holds true for sectors across. More specifically, healthcare, because you're dealing with lives there. We'll get to you again, Ramesh. From your perspective, John Keells Holdings is again a big conglomerate in Sri Lanka. You have businesses spread across transportation, IT, financial services, real estate, retail. You are also the CEO of John Keells IT and the startup incubator program that you have. That's John Keells X. Now, for you as a CIO, what are some of the most pressing challenges that you're looking at, and how are you looking at new age technologies to address this uncertain environment?
So Ashwani, I think for us, at the beginning of Sri Lanka, we have a compounded impact starting from the Easter bomb attack in 2019, followed soon by the COVID and the economic crisis. So 4 years of uncertainty is the period that we've traversed. So for us, I think technology has been a savior, so to speak, in terms of providing the platform to keep innovating and also keep reconfiguring ourselves.
Right.
I think of tech as a box of Legos for us.
Absolutely,
right?
That's
Because
interesting analogy.
today I can't predict what the business is going to ask tomorrow, and I got to be flexible. I got to be able to, can't afford to say no, but have to find a way of doing things. So I think for us, the entire replumbing was moving to the cloud. So today we've kind of decommissioned all our data centers. We are 95% on Azure. We are building a lot of the stuff on the platforms, ecosystems. So for us, it's about building inclusive technology,
right,
for starting with our employees, then taking it to our customers, partners, and basically it's about leveraging our current assets more with less, and see where we could create value.
Absolutely. So I'll come to some of the points that you have highlighted. So it's a bit of paradox as well, Ramesh. So while organizations are trying to stay resilient, they also need to look at opportunities that digital can or technology can provide them. So we'll come to that point at a later stage. Jeremie, let's hear from you. You have been a startup, since your inception in 2015. You've won several awards. What is the problem that you're trying to solve?
So we are working with technicians and a manager in the field of industrial maintenance, and we are helping them being more efficient in the process of repairing the industrial machine. It can be also engine of commercial planes and non-commercial planes. And so we are really here to serve our clients and basically try to lower the burden of things around their core activity, which is fixing mechanical stuff, and supporting them in this process. And we were discussing about crisis. For us, we were very focused prior to COVID crisis on the aerospace industry, and we've been hit straight by the COVID, because trying to raise the productivity of fixing planes when you have no planes in the sky doesn't quite make sense. So we had also to adapt, and we started to work with the chemical industry, for instance, and I have to be very thankful to Israel Chemical, which really started to work with us in a very intense way. And it's interesting because you see, while there was the issue with the aerospace industry, on the other side, the industry of chemicals, and in particular fertilizer and electronic components and other stuff really raised. So I think that a part of the resilience is also to try to find in a crisis, if you cannot try to work with the people that are really relevant in this context. And this is what we had to do to really survive and go through the crisis.
Right, points well taken, Jeremie. So very focused niche area that you're looking at, industrial maintenance. Leo, Atreyam, is it fine if I call you Leo?
Hello? Yeah, sure. So both are fine.
Right. So Leo, you've heard the initial conversation here, and you are again one of the youngest tech entrepreneurs and gamers and in continental Europe. Now, how do you perceive the enterprise space? What are the challenges you think that they are facing, and how are you trying to solve them through your views?
Yeah, so it is great to be here amongst all of my co-panels here. And instead of starting off with a challenge, I always like to be positive. So I'm going to start off with an opportunity.
Right.
I think that the greatest opportunity for enterprises is going to be to serve people, as many people as they can.
Absolutely.
The biggest thing is going to be to be able to try and solve common problems that we all face in our day-to-day lives, which can easily be solved with all of the tech
An example would help you.
Advancements we have. Yeah. So, for example, you know how when you are in an airport and you're running late, and the boarding gate or the check-in counter closes by just 1 minute, and you wish that they knew that you were in the airport and you were going to be right there. Well, this can easily be solved through two potential solutions that I can think of now. One is through the use of location. For example, you can share the location of your phone to the counter who is there, and then they can see that you're very close by. But for those who would prefer a more secure and private way, maybe a sort of messaging thing to be able to just quickly send off a small message that'll be there in about 1 minute, because when they close these counters, they're just guessing that most people are done and just call it a day. They're more than happy to wait 1 minute, and it saves you a lot of headache.
Absolutely. So sorry.
Oh, no, yeah, continue. Sorry.
So you've brought this conversation to a very experienced kind of a thing, and that would again vary from sector to sector, organization to organization, and customer centricity has really taken over most of the priorities that enterprises have when it comes to technology is centered around the customer. Sigal, again, patient care. How are you looking at the customer experience or patient experience thing here?
I'll get that there in one moment. I would just like to say that I hear again and again, and I heard it from Jeremie a moment ago, the word resilience.
Right.
And the word resilience for me sounds, it's just not enough. Sounds stagnant. Resilience means you are strong, you're trying to keep up, you're trying not to, fall apart and keeping the numbers, but you're standing still.
Right.
And this is not what has to be done when in times of uncertainty or crisis. For me, and this is maybe what represents the Medix Group's success, is when there is crisis or uncertainty, this is time when everyone is on his knees or stagnant or just trying to be resilient. Resilient is at the core of what we do every day, right?
Absolutely.
But that is when you need to run. Put all your efforts, your passion, and put yourself to innovation, to drive innovation and implement innovation, to drive fast forward moving success. So resilient, as a lot of people in this summit have been speaking about, is not enough to overcome uncertain times. You must implement and create a space for innovation and for forward-thinking services and capabilities. Now, when we speak about, to your question, about customer experience and about what works, for us in healthcare, we're lucky that demand is always there. People are in need for preventative services because they wish and are keen not to stay healthy and not to develop medical conditions. It is in everyone's interest, the payers, the providers, and the patients, to stay healthy. So there's a lot of services that work towards keeping people healthy. And then there are unlimited number of diseases that are uncovered, and more people live today many longer years with conditions, and very critical and fatal conditions like cancer have become chronic conditions today. So the demand for services to manage chronic conditions and disease in general has constantly been growing through the pandemic and on. And then you have rehabilitation, keeping productivity, mental health, which is a very big issue in today's world. So first of all, we address all these issues. The first point when you ask yourself is, am I doing something? Is a company doing something that actually makes a difference? That actually is going to be remembered, not just because it's another Me Too service, but that makes a difference, changes lives, changes the paradigm, shifts actually how healthcare is consumed and provided. And do we do that? Yes, we do. At Medix, in the Medix Group specifically, whenever we develop any service or any platform or any digital solution or technology, it has to tick certain boxes. The first box is, does it improve accessibility to healthcare? If it doesn't, no matter how great the idea will be, we will throw it to the garbage. First box, accessibility. Second, while improving accessibility to healthcare for people, for example, in India, would it be in the rural areas, in the smaller cities compared to the bigger ones? And the second point would be better medical outcomes. So does it make people just happy and smiling because they think they have accessibility and they speak to a doctor, but actually the medical outcomes are not improving? We have not achieved anything. We're in the Me Too space, and we're in the space of giving a good feeling to people. But we're here not to give a good feeling, we're here to make a difference. So that goes for first box, accessibility. Second, tick a box, has to be better proven medical outcomes. The third one, and that's the tricky one, while you improve accessibility, which is costly, and while you improve and provide better medical outcomes, you at the same, which is costly and it requires investment, we at the same time require to reduce cost. So how do you do those three things at the same time? And this is for me how we should look, and how any company should look at providing a service and implementing technology. What difference does it make, and how do you make it more affordable?
Absolutely. So, accessibility, provide better outcomes and reduce cost. So and it matters for the segment that you operate in.
And I'll just add, the only way to do that is by introducing technology and by combining technology in healthcare with medical operations. That's the only way, and I'm happy to go into more detail after my fellow panels.
Right.
have
So
their share.
one point that you highlighted here, Sigal, was to ensure that the technology is relevant before it goes into operation. And it's very easy to become numb to the technologies that are out there. So we have the newest and newest technologies there, and the outcomes that they give again depends. How do you filter out and choose what you should do now and what can wait? Ramesh.
So I think given that we are a conglomerate, Ashwani, I think we take a more broader view of the thing, given we have 70 businesses across 70 industries. So we classify technology portfolio into 3 buckets: foundation, transformation, and experiential, right? And we also look at the context of each business, because one size does not fit all.
Right.
So we have a federated governance mechanism for technology where a couple of these things are governed at a group level, a couple of them are federated to the businesses and the industry level, so that the fit for purpose is assessed and is driven. So the nice part in terms of what we did about 5 years back is launching the incubator in the form of JKX, which was started as a startup accelerator, and now it has become a co-innovation program.
Okay.
Where business ideas are thrown at startups who can come and pitch.
So
and we give them
you
seed
evaluate
funding.
the ecosystem there.
Yes,
Okay.
and we give them the seed funding to start, and if the first MVP is successful, we then bring that in. With that, also we've kind of made the entire innovation ecosystem broader, and also the technology portfolio which can be inbreeded up to the startups. So we don't kind of bucketize and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is not what we're going to do. So we have seen a lot of successful incubation coming through in terms of agri-tech, especially for retail chain, where the downstream. So we are helping the farmers use agri-tech to do agriculture in a more responsible, sustainable way, and we then buy their produce.
Oh.
So we created a sustainable ecosystem in the supply chain.
That's the sustainability piece that you're
Exactly.
addressing through that.
In terms of, so what we've seen post-COVID, we've been able to build a lot more value ecosystem with shared investments rather than only leveraging us. So distributed organizations. So we are driving more from assets to access, more from efficiencies to intelligence, and also from loyalty to engagement, wherever it's relevant, especially on the B2C segments.
Right. Jeremie, your views?
So it's true that there is more and more technology, and the rate of technological change is accelerating, and sometimes it's you can get overwhelmed by all this technology. The way we filter out what we're going to implement or not, the first things that we look at is do the outcome of this technology as a value for our client. And I think that it's a healthy first step, because it's also as you checking what are the KPIs you can use to measure the value that you create. And those KPIs are very useful after when you try to make sales, because those KPI can enable within the company, your client's company, after to really make a sales. Sometimes you know that you're doing something useful. Everyone knows that you're doing something useful, but no one can measure it. And so it's okay for the guy on the ground, but the CFO will not buy it because he cannot measure the ROI on what you're selling. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, okay, there is an effect, but is it practically and financially viable to reach this effect? So it is, can my client really incorporate it, and can I sell it to a price that makes sense? And here, I think that one of the good examples where technology is still debatable in this area is augmented reality. Practically, it can be very challenging because, I'm talking about maintenance here. People, and the American Army said it itself, it's hard to wear those glasses for a long time. So when you're going for maintenance that is going to last for a few hours in a critical condition, which means that it can be extremely warm, it's hard to have several kilos on your head. So even if augmented reality obviously brings some value here, this value cannot be really implemented here. And the cost also can be very, very high, which means that there are things that you can do on your phone, not as well as with augmented reality, but it's like a Pareto thing, which means that you bring 80% of the value through a phone that everyone has in its pocket, and to bring the extra 20%, not only it's impractical, but it's going to cost you a lot more. So you have to think about those things. So this is the second thing. And the third thing is that in case the technology is at its beginning and you need to develop it, is it really mature enough, in the sense that, you know, you're going to develop a technology, and maybe this technology is being developed at the same time by a Google, a Microsoft, and things like that, and you're going to arrive with something that you have developed yourself, and 3 months after, Google is going to arrive with the same thing and outsource, and probably at least as good as you do, and so you will never get the bucks back that you invested. So sometimes you have to think, is it mature enough? Is it really like fundamental technology here? Or can I already, or are we talking about research, or are we talking about engineering? And sometimes it's better to be in the, let some people move forward with the technology and be in the place where you're doing really small engineering. And it's very true in AI, by the way. And just doing the engineering, or in AI focusing on the data and focusing on the value and the product that you bring to your customer, rather than really trying a bit by ego to reinvent the wheel and do something very, very ambitious, and end up being a situation where, you know, another standard comes, a big player comes, and everything is open sourced.
I have to dare taking the microphone for a moment.
Sure.
I'm very appreciative, clearly, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit out there. You're a startup, a successful one, and on the move to the right place. But I would like to see you a little bit more optimistic and less on the defensive side. We at the Medix Group do invest and look all the time for innovations, for startups, and we have our corporate ventures arm. And we like to look at people who are not afraid to be overshadowed by a Google or a Microsoft or a SAP. We like people to believe they can change the world, they can educate and drive people to use a new technology that they have never seen before, that is completely disrupting the way they're living, waking up in the morning, working, going to work, coming back, consumer health, using consumer gaming, or managing their Azure or SharePoint, or it is about bringing something that, as you said, has value, but is transformative. And being on the defensive, I don't think you can win a football match if you're not scoring. So you have to keep the defenses, and you have to make sure you're not getting those goals, but you have to score yourself and move forward and be innovative, and they're believing in yourself, that even if the Googles might overshadow you, you're going to kick ass and you're going to be just better than they are. And then you might get a strong exit and they will come and buy you. That's my personal view.
That's not, I guess that I explained myself. It's not about being defensive. It's to know where you're employing your resources, and knowing that what the investing that you're making, the investment will get rewarding. And if you are not a core technology, and we are not a core technology company, what we're doing is application for our clients. Developing a core technology and doing research can be sometimes very interesting when we're talking about the core of our product. But even if I can do a better email than Gmail, and I can bully Google out of the email field and Outlook and whatever, this is not what my clients expect from me. They expect different things. So what I'm saying here is that sometimes it's better to be on top of effort of research that has been doing some fine engineering, and thus producing value and being sure that your resources are used as best, rather than by ego trying to develop something that are going to be developed by 15 people after, and that you will be able to use, because this is what the value of what your client expect from you.
Right. So that was an interesting mix of technology and leadership in sync together here, right? Atreyam, your views in terms of what do you see when these things are happening all around?
Yeah, sure. So a few things I want to keep clear. First of all of my panelists brought some great points. There's one which I fully agree with, and one which I would like to put a different perspective on.
Sure.
So the first one which I fully agree with, to add on, so it's all about providing value. It's about providing utility to as many as you can. And I do think that you should take more of a bullish approach to it and try and make it. And what is going to happen, despite it being uncertain, will no doubt be much better than if you had
Creating a new category.
Yeah. And then the point which I would like to put a new perspective on is the same topic as this panel, which is about how to craft resilient tech and the word resilience. The way I look at the word resilience is a person that's just trudging on up a steep incline.
Right.
Okay, and sometimes that incline can get much more, and then sometimes it can flatten out.
Right.
But the goal of resilience, or the word, is that you're always moving and to keep moving at the same speed, or mostly the same speed, regardless of the gradient of the incline that you're climbing. And this is what I believe to be a better way of looking at how to create resilient
So
tech.
we do agree.
Yes. So one point which I would like to add to this is that as much as we like to develop and make and implement new systems, which we definitely should, we should never forget the legacy infrastructure which brought us here and kept us going throughout the hard times. Can I bring up a short example about
Sure,
currently?
please do so, yes.
So many of you might have experienced this, but a couple of days ago there was a airline system failure with Lufthansa. I'm sure that many of you from abroad have felt its effects. But basically what happened is that there was some rail work being done in Frankfurt, and they accidentally cut a fiber optic cable. And Lufthansa, by the way, is headquartered in Frankfurt, and their whole base of operations is there, including their servers, which meant it was devastating for Lufthansa. It left many passengers unable to check in, baggage unable to be checked in through and through, as well as not even having a boarding pass. If I could show you the boarding pass that I got from Air India.
This is my nightmare.
It is your standard boarding pass, as you can
Okay.
see, right? It's got all the codes, it's got all the security features and everything. You would not believe the boarding pass that was issued when the flight system went down. This, by the way, is an equally genuine boarding pass. I would like to show you. Maybe you can see it here. It is literally a printed piece of paper with handwritten text and a random employee signature saying that it's true, it's valid, and this is the genuine way of doing it. And
Did you board that flight?
luckily I did, that's why I'm here. Also, the baggage
Well done.
tag, in case I've got to make a claim, is handwritten. So I really hope, and I luckily got off my baggage. But the point that I was trying to mention with this is that it is great that we have all of these new systems, and while they can be improved, I think one of the biggest things which would help us is if the legacy systems like this were not only normalized but implemented, and every company had the infrastructure for it. Flight system failure is nothing new at all. In fact, it happens like clockwork. Just 2 months ago, it happened with Southwest, and 2 months before that, it happened with British Airways. So these are things which we've got to keep in mind, that when we're making resilient tech, no matter what challenges come, we always have a constant gradient of challenges. We've got to be sure that we have the amount of speed and torque, slightly engineering, to be able to go up that hill regardless of the situation that is. We just have to change our gear ratios. We've got gear ratios for speed, but we also need gear ratios for torque or for power.
Absolutely. Very well put across. Sigal, you have a comment to make there, or should we?
If you want me to do one, I was
Quickly,
I was telling myself, God bless, we all keep knowing how to write. If we forgot writing, there will not be any boarding, right?
And now we have.
That's a technology that is going to be forever around and keep us boarding the flight.
Yes,
And
Ramesh.
also, I think a good point that he brought out was, I think a lot of the old organizations still stick to legacy tech, but not looking at commoditized technologies which could give a lot more resilience than the legacy tech. And I think if you look at Sean, today we moved on to internet, cloud, mobile, all commoditized technologies. Because we think it's a utility, right? If someone else can do it cheaper, better, at a bigger scale than you, why would you want to do that? Focus on what DNA that you could build on top of it, and really purpose build your assets to deliver value to your stakeholders.
I'd like, if I may, just to add, because it's really important what you just said. And in the beginning of our conversation, you spoke about taking the time during the pandemic or straight thereafter to really move all your internal capabilities to the cloud, to Azure, et cetera, et cetera. A company that does not do that today, really honestly, I mean, this is hygiene, right? And all the Lufthansas and the bigs who have invested so much in bricks and mortar technologies, they better wake up, because tomorrow is not there for them if they're not yesterday have moved on to a hygiene basic hygiene of being on Azure, on SharePoint, being fully in the cloud, and being completely capable of reinventing in no time, putting the plug up, down, back and forth, and working from anywhere to anywhere, and backing up working capabilities. So honestly, this boarding story is fun, because in today's world where they could have so many options for this not to happen, I would be ashamed. Really, it's hygiene.
I believe also, so it's not always easy to really price it and sell it, but you can develop technologies that are really resilient compared to existing technologies. This is what we see with Elon Musk and Starlink, I think. And we see how useful it has been in the war in Ukraine. And so he has had problem to really get paid for that, but we see that as something very valuable. We see that also in numerous stack of technologies, for instance, in the industrial world, where you have, of course, the cellular, but you can also have LoRa technology and Sigfox. So I believe that it's very good if you can work without technologies, but sometimes you can also sell technology that is here to back up if there is a problem to the existing technology, and doesn't have you returning to the pen and paper, although it's charmful.
Can I add quickly something?
Sure, yes.
Again, this word resilience, and I wonder how you feel about it. For me, resilience is one of the attributes that a company or leadership should have, but it is not what is leading the company or leading the technology. So what has to lead the technology is the innovation, is the capability to be transformative, to impact this world in a shared value, so that profitability goes up while we make a difference in any kind of way, in any kind of industry. But it has to be transformative. It has to transform the experience of the customer. It has to make it more streamlined. It has to have data. The data has to be able to bring in new insights that would then bring up new products and new services. So there's way more, and resilience is on the how. It's not the what. Resilience is part of how you create something. It's an attribute, and it's not a core. It's not what is going to be sold. You don't sell resilience, right?
If I may add to that, I think it's always contextual. Like, so Lufthansa, 10 years back, the system they had would have given the resilience, but it has to withstand the passage of time, right? So resilience today and tomorrow is going to be different as well. Absolutely. For each of the business, right? So if you don't take that into context and re-engineer, redo the plumbing, obviously you're not going to be resilient. Right. So that's foundational for you to be innovative, right? Because if you don't be resilient for today, and your resilient definition doesn't change for tomorrow, you're not going to be relevant.
Absolutely. Right, so while we touched upon technology, we touched about innovation, we touched upon resilience. Now one piece, which we missed out was on the security element. Now, too much of technology, yes, absolutely needed, but then security again goes along with it. How are you looking to craft that inbuilt security rather than bolt on, later? Anyone, let's have it free flowing.
So, we kind of launched about 3 years back the zero trust architecture with our migration to the cloud. So we've kind of moved our SOC to Sentinel. We look at M365 from endpoint to user identity, endpoint, information and workloads, and location networks. So we take the 5 pivotal points and look at also classifying in terms of all those 5 in terms of privileged, restricted, internal, external. So based on the policy framework, then we are looking at classifying assets. So we are not trying to look at protecting all assets, look at very significant assets which we moved into the Azure part of it, and then looking at putting this, the multi-layer security framework in terms of enforcement. Because today 100% security is a fallacy. It's impossible and it's costly. So you need to look at what you really want to protect and what do you really want to kind of enhance in terms of the journey.
Zero Trust is most of the organizations have taken an approach towards
Yeah, so I would also like to add on to this. So I fully agree with what was said, and I would also like to say that while security is always thought of limiting the amount of data that is captured and not allowing data to be captured, and that is called secure. I think true security is one where you're able to capture the data, but be very clear about what's going to happen and how are you going to use it. Because at the end of the day, our data is basically our thing, and normally we would we always keep our things and then we lock it and keep them in the safe. We don't just delete our things, or we have nothing at all. So in that regard, it's more about how you're going to use it or not use it than if you are going to collect it. And one more thing which I would just like to add about the previous topic, which I was not able to mention, was to be resilient. I think that the biggest thing is to actually be adaptable, to know that the future is not going to be this constant gradient. It's going to keep going down or up, and how you will end up adapting to it. And in this, you've got to have a certain mindset, which I see that many of my co-panelists have here, but to a large extent out in the world, I think that it's not there. And this type of so what you need is to be able to make decisions on your feet, like a gamer would. No one tells him to look left, pick up that, look right. No, they'll take that type of decision on their own as they see fit. And the other thing is to have an entrepreneurial mindset, regardless of if you are a startup or if you're a Fortune 500 company. I think that mindset is what will keep the resilient being machine keep walking uphill, and to be as resourceful as you can with hardly any resources, and to keep thinking on your feet. Because what happens many times is the standard operating procedures kind of limit great managers in what they can do. They're trapped in an effective glass box, it feels where they are unable to move and are confined by the constraints of the glass box, but they can see out there what they've got to do. So in that type of situation, what I believe is that they should do what it says on fire alarms. In case of emergency, break glass.
So I would like, before we move on, I very much appreciate what my fellow panelists have shared. Before I will share my view, I would like to ask the audience a question. 2 questions, very short one, and please do raise your hand because the answer is really important here. And I hope you're okay with that. Sure. So, do you feel that your data today, wherever you share it, and it doesn't matter, on Microsoft, on Meta, on your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, do you feel your data is safe? No. Does anyone feel his data is safe? No. Okay. Well, you see, so that's it. So we're all investing, and I do, and I'm telling you honestly, it impacts my balance sheet tremendously. I invest millions every year on privacy and security because this is what we have to do, and we're all up in the cloud, etc., etc. However, we do not own our data. Do you think you own your data? No. So your data is not safe, and your data is not owned by you. So today on Web 2, data is owned by those very big conglomerates like Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. You put your medical information somewhere, you don't own it. I've asked thousands of, not personally, but through surveys, in the healthcare space, in order to have access to a certain medication or a certain treatment that you might not be able to afford or have access to, or you don't even know that exists, would you agree to share your personal data in an aggregate way and feel maybe it's not 100% protected the way you feel right now your data is not protected. No one said no. So basically, there is this imaginary thing about data and protection. No one feels his data is protected. No one feels his data is owned by him. And yet, we're all investing so much in protection and privacy. We should continue to do that, but there is an opportunity. And moving into the Web3, using blockchain, we're actually going to hopefully, and I'm happy for you to share and feedback, be able to own our data and access it as we wish, and not to have to pay to access data. So if you're my brother, and let's assume that for a minute, we don't look it like, but that doesn't matter, and we agree to share our data, and I want to go on your day, we need to pay, okay, to have access to our own data today. I know the time's up, but I've waited 25 or 30 minutes late, so I'm not going to stop on time. So I will just finish what I had. Just 2 minutes I waited more than 2 minutes. So basically, today we pay to reach our own data. We don't own it, and we're not protected. So hopefully through Web3 and going through blockchain and new innovations, and not just by being resilient and by running forward, we're going to own our data. We won't have to pay for it. We will decide what we will do with it, and we will share it openly if it is useful for each and one of us. So in order to access healthcare, I will be able, or someone or you will be able to say, I'm sharing my information on a platform so that millions of other people will be able to access that level of information of what treatment worked or didn't work for them based on their DNA that is also shared, etc. So I really think that privacy and security is a line on balance sheets that's impacting our bottom lines really strongly. We'll continue to do that, but it is a fake story that this is what is going to lead the future, because data is going to be handled completely differently, and this whole situation will be completely transformed.
So I'm a different area because I work with industrial clients, and sometimes they have trade secrets and know-how and so on and so forth that they are very, very careful on protecting. Sometimes we work also with companies that at least part of their business is military. So I think that in this case, really you need to see the cost benefits of using some of the data, which means that I'm always discussing with the client, is it the kind of data you would be comfortable to be public if, God forbid, but if some kind of problem was ensuing. And we try to limit as much as possible and design our solution around the data that can be lost, and not around the data that will be critical. Because also once you get into the data that are going to be critical and problematic in the sales process and in the implementation process, you have a lot more in the organization defense and restriction. So you really, I believe that it's a good thing to start from the fact that what you're doing, although you're implementing the best practice, also we're lucky to have the cloud, because to some extent we have more protection that we could have had in the past, and there is also a lot of service related to the cloud that are raising the data level. But starting from the fact that this data might be submitted to a breach is a good way to start, and to design the solution and what you're offering to your client based on this discussion. And oftentimes when you have this discussion, you find ways to offer your solution using data that are not critical. But you need to be very honest and clear with your client, because at some point, if you don't, it's going to backlash with people from the IT systems or others.
Right. I think we have overshot the time, and I really want to
Did
thank...
we?
I'm sorry, Sigal. I'll have an interview with you outside. Really, thank you so much for sharing your views. It's been a great discussion. I truly stand inspired with this conversation. I'm sure our viewers will as well. Thank you again, and thank you for joining us.